Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 145 of Keeping It Real. I'm your host, Kadis. Ooh. And today, well, who knows? Going to talk about a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Keep it interesting, keep it fun. You know, it really, at the end of the day, is just a show. Not that big of a deal. If you have any interest in supporting this show, please send me an email at jackkadis@gmail.com. That's Jack, J-A-C-K-L, Kadis, K-A-D-I-S @gmail.com. I have a cut in between, on my left foot, in between my pointer and my index toe. It's killing me. I don't think toes go by the same names as fingers, but if they did, those would be the toes. And they're probably, that probably helped you discern which toes. I have it's right on the webbing. Like, that's where the cut is. I don't even know how that happened. Like, what cut me there? I don't know. But it's really aggravating. I really, lately, I've got work. My schedule has changed these past 2 days, and I wonder if I should maybe just stop beating myself up and embrace it. Maybe I should just embrace it. I don't know. Maybe I should just embrace it. And it's funny because it all started, I think I don't know what the reason was, I guess. But it's like, all of a sudden, I have this day where I woke up, and I got up early, and I got my video stuff and the editing stuff done before work, which is rare and awesome and amazing. And I went to work. I even got new pants in the exact same breath. And I went to work, and I came back from work. And then the next day, I barely wake up in time with enough time to do Keeping It Real before work. And that leaves, majority of my stuff to do when I get home from work. And it's like, what? Why would I do that? I don't know. But then the next day it happens again. And then here we are today again, where right when I finish this episode, I'm going to have to go straight to work. Well, yesterday I guess I didn't have work, but I left it. I had to leave the house around 3:30, and I knew I wasn't going to get back until around 10ish, and I only got Keeping It Real done before I left. And it was like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I'm thinking, but I don't know. It's I don't want to beat myself up. Is it really a big deal? Yeah, I guess so. In other news, what can be said? Am I good? Am I in frame? Yes. What can be said about? I don't know. What is there to say? Well, I feel like there's a lot to say. A lot can be said about lots of things. But what should I say? And that maybe is a bit trickier. I don't know. Trying to move. I want my audio panel thing to be much further away from me than it actually is, because I find that I actually have been knocking it with my foot, and that is not good. There we go. Much better. So hopefully the audio isn't too bad, because someone just started. There's a giant lawnmower right outside my building, but it looks like he's leaving. I figured out yesterday or the day before that I actually am able to turn off. The air conditioning unit is right behind this wall, and I can actually just turn it off if I press a couple buttons. I just have to remember to turn it back on when I finish this and before I leave for work, so it's cold when I get home. Yeah. I mean, this is we really are keeping it real out here. This is how we keep it real. Yesterday, I don't think I finished talking. I think I should probably finish my review, my summary of Breakfast at Tiffany's. So I think yesterday we left off at where Holly's husband from back home came and found her in New York City. And Holly said she didn't want to go home with him, so she had him jump on the train. She packed a bag and acted like she was going to go home with him for his sake. But when they got to the train station, she very much said, "Oh, Fred, tell him I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home." And Fred, this is once again something that's very 1950s. Fred looked up at this gentleman and said, kind of give like a gentlemanly, they kind of have like a gentlemanly exchange, whereas like, you know, it was like they were both kind of her parent in that moment. And Fred was kind of like, looked up at him, didn't say anything, and then he said, "It's okay, son. I appreciate you for wanting to help, but I'll just say my goodbyes and you can wait over there." And that's what he did. And that's what he did. And then the guy got on the train and left. And then Holly says to Fred, "Okay, I have to get terribly drunk tonight. I have to get super drunk tonight." And they go to a bar, and she does. She gets absolutely hammered. And then Fred takes her home, and she's drunk, and she starts like, I don't know, Fred I think is a bit fed up with her because she wants to keep drinking, and Fred said you shouldn't drink anymore. And then she says, "I can do whatever I want. I have money to buy my own drink. I don't need you or your whiskey. I can pay for it," you know? And that's very much like this awkward point in them knowing one another. It's probably the first time that they've really gotten like up in arms with each other. And so Fred, and then she says some more hurtful things, like kind of things like dismissing Fred and like all that, I guess, like dismissing like Fred clearly cares for her, and she just kind of is doing her best to push him away. And so Fred's like, "Well, if that's how you really feel, then I'm leaving." And so he leaves. And then no, I can't remember what happens next. I think this might be where I think I already told about the scene where she's singing the song about the Moon River, but I think this might be when that happens. I can't remember what happens after their fight because the party already happened. The guy already came and went. I think now, I can't remember. I think this is when they spend the entire day together. So they start at Tiffany's, I think. And she's showing him all around Tiffany's. Or they just spend a lot of time together in between now and the next important plot point. They hang out all the time, and they're so in love, and it's like awesome, you know. They take turns doing something with the other that they've never done before. And it's wonderful. It's magical. And it's like what's the things that they hadn't done before? I can't remember. I don't know. They end up getting a ring ends up getting engraved at Tiffany's. And Fred goes back the next morning and picks it up while they're all hanging out every day and everything. And he'll keep this ring, and he doesn't give it to her yet. And they go to this is one of the funniest scenes. They go to this, what I think is like a dollar store, and Holly is trying to tell him like, "This I used to steal. Have you ever stolen?" And he was like, "No." So they shoplift together, and it's a very funny scene. And they're just like hanging out. And this is one of the best scenes ever, I think, in the whole movie. They go and they sit down by this fountain in this park, and Holly is, you know, just describing and talking, and I think she's talking about like her type in men, because there was this one guy, the ninth richest man in North America, and then there's like this other Brazilian dude, and then there's like someone else and all that, and she's just like kind of going through it all in her head out loud to Fred. And Fred is sitting there because she kind of says like, well, I don't like he's not the best, and I don't like him, and he doesn't work for me. And Fred's just sitting there with this face like, I can't believe, like, why is she not thinking of me? Like, why won't she say anything about me? Or like, why is she like doing, like, saying all this in front of me? Like, I thought, it's just like, dang, like, which, I think a lot of guys have been in a situation like that. It's very relatable, and it's like, damn, Fred getting beat down. Like, spending all this time with this girl, and like she doesn't even think of you romantically at all, or at least that's what it seemed communication-wise. We can never know what Holly's thinking. I think Holly liked Fred from the very beginning, but she kind of wrestles with it in her mind throughout the entire movie, and that's a scene that stuck out very much so to me. And then, for whatever reason, they stop seeing one another so often. I don't know I think Holly pulls away again, and Fred has to sort of accept that, like, she likes this Brazilian guy now, and she wants to move to Brazil. And she's spending all this time with him. She has this, like, mental breakdown and has to call Fred in, because the Brazilian guy can't handle it, and the Brazilian guy just says, and then he just like says goodbye, and the whole time Fred just trying to bet his best to live his life, but he's sad, and so then it comes down to Holly gets arrested for her ties with the mafia. Holly and Fred get arrested because Fred is just in the room, I believe, and they end up getting free because, it wasn't that severe, that intense. And they're in this taxi cab together. And this is the climax of the movie. Holly is telling the driver to go straight to the airport because even though she heard that she, it was sad to hear Holly talk about it because Fred asked her about how her relationship was with the Brazilian man that she was going to go to South America with and start a new life. Because this is very on point with Holly, right? It's like she just runs away and runs away and runs away. And like she ran away to New York City, and now it's time to run away to South America. And Fred is just being sort of inquisitive. Not accusing, but rather just asking questions, trying to see if Holly can answer her own dilemmas. Because that's the only way anything's ever going to happen, right, is if Holly comes to a conclusion herself. And Fred is very much like, so has he asked you to marry him yet? And Holly says, no. Well, I figure he probably will. And this man, of course, has a very rich family, and Holly is not rich, so it's kind of like this, like, Holly, I mean, is kind of wants to marry him for his money, to be honest, and he can't have that sort of thing happen. So he thinks she's very beautiful, but he's not gonna. It's very much like his family. Like he can't disgrace his family's name like this. So Holly learns in the taxi cab from Fred that the Brazilian man, did not wait up for her and went ahead and flew back early without her because, she was in jail and that was the final straw, and he can't, have his family thinking that he's in a relationship with that kind of girl. And Holly doesn't lose any, Holly doesn't really care about this. She says, well, I still have a ticket to South America, okay? And what good is my ticket if I don't use it? So she continues to tell the cab driver, go to the airport. And Fred is like starting to sort of press into Holly. And Fred is like, you can't go to South America. You can't just go to South America. Like, you can't, because I love you. And she's like, well, what does that mean? You own me? And Fred says, yes, actually, it does mean I own you. And Holly said, no one owns me. And I reject love, and I'm never going to, and you don't know me, and none of this matters to me at all and anything. And Fred starts to say, well, yeah, it kind of does. You have friends here. You have a life here. You have your cat here. And she says, oh, my cat doesn't even have a name, and he doesn't matter to me. And she tells the cab driver to pull over. And I think she's going to just jump out and leave Fred. But instead, she lets the cat loose in the rainy streets of Manhattan, and then says drive. And this is where you think, oh no, like there's no returning from this. Holly's lost it. She let her cat go. She loves her cat. And then 2-3 blocks later, after a couple more heated words, Fred tells the cab driver to pull over, and he gets out, and he gives Holly one last sentence or two, and he says, well, I do love you, and you can go if you want, but I always loved you, and here, I've been holding on to this for a while, but I think now it's time you have it. And he tossed her the ring from Tiffany's. And he closed the door. And I think it's like, it's very clear why Fred got out. Like, I honestly, I knew that why he got out. Like, it made sense to me why he had to get out 2 blocks later, because he's going to go try and find the cat. Whether or not she stays or not, it's in his mind. I think in his mind, he's pretty confident that she's not going to stay. But, he's at the very least, he's going to find the cat. And she looks at the ring, and she starts to get tears in her eyes, and she decides that she's not going to go in that moment. And she gets back out of the cab, and she runs to find Fred, and she finds him. And then they're both looking for the cat to get... Well, Fred never went down the alleyway. Fred watches her look for the cat. And it's pouring down rain, and she goes into the alleyway looking for the cat. And she finally finds the cat. And then they go home together. And that's the movie. Breakfast at Tiffany's. Starring Audrey Hepburn. Now I can tell you about a movie called The Fault in Our Stars. The Fault in Our Stars is a pretty good movie, I think. It stars 2 actors that I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so before, I would like to give a little bit, because movies are very personal for me, I guess. So with Breakfast at Tiffany's, because The Fault in Our Stars incites a whole different wave of feelings within me. But Breakfast at Tiffany's makes me sort of feel like a gentleman. It makes me feel like I know what's best for a girl, and I really can, stand up and be the man that I think I could be. And I feel like I really relate with Fred a lot in Breakfast with Tiffany's. I feel like I really like it wouldn't matter to me if anyone called me by a name that wasn't mine. I would just be a gentleman. Like, it wouldn't matter to me if a girl I was seeing wasn't particularly wealthy or made poor choices. If I loved her, I loved her. And I would just be a good man. I would just, be like Fred. And I love Breakfast with Tiffany's because I clocked that about Fred, but the very second that he got out of the cab at the very start of the movie, and then throughout the entire film, he continues to make the right choice. And it's a very feel-good thing for me to, see him get out of the cab and think to myself, yeah, this is a good man, and then, have it be confirmed over and over and over again until the very last scene where he gets out, finds the cat. And it's amazing. Everything I related to so much. Even when he gets out of the cab and supposedly lets her go to the airport, you might be thinking, how's that good? Well, at a certain point, Fred's got to look out for himself. And if she really wanted to be alone, then there's nothing Fred could have done. If you truly love somebody at the end of the day, you must let them go, in a sense. They have to be free to make their own decisions. You cannot try to bend the world to correct their leaving. If they want to leave you, if you love them, they must leave. And that is how it goes. And it's something that I feel Fred really picked a good moment. He really and honestly, it wasn't even the first time that he left. He lived above her for a long while before she had that plane ticket and before she got arrested, where she was just seeing another man. And the whole time, Fred, I guess, was living his own life, letting it go. Sad, of course, but it is what it is. And then it all came rushing back when they're in this cab together, and then it's just a beautiful movie. It's a beautiful movie, and it's all about like love is the only thing for a movie to even be about. I feel like why? How could you write a film about anything other than love? Anyway, now we talk about The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Amazing. I never read the book, but I just watched the movie for the first time. So the movie starts out with this girl. She has short hair and she has, I believe, terminal cancer. I think she has terminal cancer, whereas she's not expected to live past. Is that terminal, or is terminal reserved for things that are when you're like already like bedridden in the hospital? I'm not sure. But she has cancer and it's expected to kill her before her parents die, basically. She's expected to die before her parents. She's already had to make a wish because she was already on her deathbed. She had fluid all in her lungs, but they managed to save her. And this movie explores her relationship with her parents and, most importantly, her first and strongest love with a boy she meets. So anyway, I feel like it's best to kind of go scene by scene for the best of my recollection, at least. So the movie opens with kind of a monologue from her where she's voicing over all these scenes, describing how her illness has affected her life. You know, she's shown in the doctor's office where the doctor and her mom are telling her she's depressed, but she says, "I'm not depressed." But apparently she is depressed, and that's just a side effect of all this medication she's taking and the illness that she has. You know, she doesn't get out much, and she has two very loving parents, almost overwhelmingly loving. They love her so much that it's almost incomprehensible. And, you know, her mom, because of that love, kind of says now you have to go to this group filled with kids like you. And it's not an option. You have to go. I'll drive you there, and you have to go. And she says, I don't want to go. And she says, you have to go. You have to socialize with kids like you. So she gets dropped off, and she goes into this church, and she goes into the basement, and there's this big rug with Jesus' face on it, and this quirky dude that leads the group. And they all take turns going around in the circle, telling what their illness is and their name and introducing them to themselves. And she goes for 1 or 2 days, and then, like the second or third time she shows up, it's like a weekly thing. She shows up, there's this boy. And immediately, the first time that they meet one another is before they even get down to the basement. They bump into one another in the hallway of the church. And he's like, sorry, I didn't see you there. And they look into one another's eyes for a little bit too long. And you immediately know, as the watcher of the movie, the love story is about these two people. They are in love. These people are already in love from the first time they looked at one another. And now we just get to watch this love story unfold. So, as you can expect, they go and they take their seats, and they're very much looking at one another. And I feel like this whole thing is like a book that, it's one of those books that a girl would really like to read around, like, you know how, you know, men like watch porn, you know what I'm saying? Like they just watch porn, jack off, and it's done. And it's like a very, like a 5-minute, 10-minute ordeal, right? But women read these dirty novels, and it's like, and they like to draw it out, I feel like, and it's like this long, it's like women are like to get in that same sexual space with like slow burn, I guess, right? And I feel like this movie, it's based off this book, and I feel like this book was definitely one of those books where if you're a girl and you're into romance and you're into steamy stuff, this is definitely a slow burn kind of book, because she's very much like, this is a very much like a girl in her own world living her life the best that she can, right? cancer aside. It's just she's a girl and she's living her life, not asking for anything, not doing anything. But then all of a sudden, she bumps into this guy. And the guy keeps looking at her, keeps staring at her, and he makes a fool of himself when it's time for him to introduce himself. And she learns that he's got a fake leg. And you're like, they both have cancer. And when the session's over, this guy continues to sort of show what he's about to her, right? It's like very much like a not leaving her alone situation. The session's over, and they're at the front steps of the church, and she sees her mom's car. She's waiting for her mom. He walks out, and they just start to exchange words where, like, he says, Haley, what's her name? Haley Grace? She has a double name, and I forget what his name is. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but it doesn't matter. Their names don't matter. He starts to say to her, like, they start to just exchange words, and it's very, like, snappy, and, like, they're riffing off one another with their words. And it's like, you can imagine they're probably not even thinking too much about what they're saying. They're more just, like, super in love with one another, trying to hold a conversation. And it's not awkward. It's like they've known each other for forever, It's, like, cool. And he's basically gets to the point where he's like, well, why don't you come hang out with me? And she's like, oh, maybe I'm free later this week, maybe. And he's like, no, right now. And that's very much like, that very much, I feel like, ties what I was just saying in. Like, for a guy, it's like guys hunt like instant. As a guy, you hunt like instant success. You hunt like immediate victory in like all tasks and everything, and it's like muscle and get there. But for girls, it's like, a girl is just, she's like looking out for herself, and she's just like, yeah, maybe sometime this week, maybe I could be free like next week or something. And they kind of clash on that. Like, she thinks this, he thinks this, and he ends up winning. And he's like, no, you come on, right? Come to my place right now, And she, I think, ends up giving in. And she's like, okay, we'll do it your way. I'll go to your place. And he kind of wins, I guess. And before she walks down the stairs to go tell her mom that she's good and she doesn't need to ride home, she's met a friend, she notices him put a cigarette in his mouth. And this is, some people might say this is a corny aspect of the movie. But his name is Gus. And Gus puts a cigarette in his mouth, and she looks and she sees the cigarette, and I think he offers her one too. Now, this is a theory I have about the movie, right? This is a theory, actually. This is actually a very, very good theory I have. So he puts the cigarette in his mouth, and he offers her one. And she's like, oh my God, you ruined this whole thing. That's what she says to him. You ruined this whole thing. That's disgusting. Because, they have cancer. She has lung cancer, right? So a cigarette is like the most stupid thing that any guy hoping to attract her could possibly do. You ruined it. That's what she says to him. You ruined it. And he says, it's a metaphor, you see. You put the thing that does the killing right between your lips, but you don't give it the power to kill. So apparently, Gus just likes to hold cigarettes in his mouth and not light them. Now, here's my theory. Gus, I'm out for you, okay? Because I'm still very young, but I've been younger, right? And I've, been interacting with girls that I like. And it's very easy, right? I believe that, because the story isn't really about Gus. It's about, is it her name? I think her name's Haley Grace. It's about Haley Grace. Right? So it's not, Gus's life story and who he is isn't as important. And I believe that Gus didn't actually do that. I believe that Gus wasn't actually a metaphor kind of guy. I think Gus actually smoked cigarettes, but he could tell how much that upset Haley Grace in the moment. So he decided that he just wasn't going to smoke them anymore and came up with a quick lie to just have her believe that he never did. Now, I want you to think about this for a second, because in the case that this is the case, you might think, well, no, Gus is a liar. That's bad. He lied, and that's not good. But on the other hand, I think it's kind of sweet and romantic, especially because smoking is addictive, you know? In an instant, he decided to give it up for this girl he just met. And I think that is, whether or not he lied about it or not, a sign that he's truly in love with her. So, you know, he regains her trust back after that, and she's like, okay. And then she tells her mom, her mom pulls up in the car, like, okay, I'll take you home now. And she's like, actually, I think I'm going to go hang out with Gus. And she does. She goes to his house. She says hey to his two parents, goes down to his basement, which is also his bedroom. And like it's like his space. And they start to talk books. She loves to read, but more importantly, she likes to read just this one book over and over again. And Gus is very much like, Gus wants to know everything about her. He's very inquisitive. He's very like, well, tell me this, and this. And she says that she's been reading the same book over and over and over again. She loves the book. It's by this author that only ever wrote one book, and it's amazing. And so he says, well, I've been reading this book about like awesome gladiator star death wars and stuff like that, like a very boy book. And they say, let's trade. And he gives her the book to go home with. He very much gives her the book, right? And so she goes home and she's reading that new book. And that's when her mom instantly clocks like, oh, you really like this guy. You're reading a book he gave you, and it's not the book that you always read. And that's like, you know, it's interesting throughout the movie to see sort of this love story unfold from the mom's point of view, right? Because I don't think the mom ever, you know, it's like a new thing that the mom never expected, right? But the parents are also wise beyond their years, because they probably never expected their kid to have cancer, right? So they're just kind of ready for the next thing. But she reads the book, and she and Gus, you know, Gus just keeps on advancing, does not stop advancing. And I'm thinking about other things right now. So Gus just keeps on advancing and does not stop advancing and keeps learning about her. And then he decides, oh, I think I'm missing a few things, but then we're just going to skip to this. He decides, oh, I still have my Make-A-Wish thing. You know, so I save my Make-A-Wish. So he has this idea. He's like, well, why don't I use my Make-A-Wish? Because there's one night, you know, she's very much like, her life is very much like she's texting him at the table with her parents. Like, she's very, like, Gus has become her entire life. And then he says to her, he managed to get in touch with this author that she loved so much, and which was, you know, totally, you know, she couldn't believe it. Like, she'd been trying to reach him for forever, and he just, you know, seems to do it first try. And The guy lives in Amsterdam, and he says, okay, now you try and write him at this address. And she does, and she gets through. And in the response to her, he says, I would love to have you anytime. And it's like, and she says, Mom. And this is the first time that the mom rushes into the room. I think she's just wearing a towel, just got out of the shower. And Mom runs into the room, and I think she's expecting Haley Grace to be like suffocating on fluid in her lungs, right? But instead, she just shouted Mom because she got an email back, which is very much like, like this, like you can see how it's like this build-up kind of, whereas the watcher, you're kind of expecting the excitement of Gus to be Haley's downfall. Like that might excite her heart too much and cause her to, sort of relapse on her disease. And Gus is going to end up killing her because it's too much excitement, right? It's unspoken. No one ever says that in the movie, that's a possibility. But as the watcher, that's kind of what I was expecting. And that's very much reinforced, I feel, for me when she got really excited about how she was just invited to Amsterdam, all because of Gus. She was able to reach her favorite author, and whomst wrote back and said, if you're ever in Amsterdam, please pay a visit. And she's like, Mom, we have to go to Amsterdam. Do you think we can go? And of course, the mom says, we just can't afford that. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. We just can't afford that. And she's like, of course, that's cool. Like, my bad. I forgot we couldn't afford that. And guess who comes and saves the day? He says, Haley Grace, I'd like to take you out on a picnic. And they go out to this field of this statue with these bones. And he says to her, I still have my wish from when I was terminally ill and I was about to die. From Make-A-Wish, I still have my wish. And they call them genies, because genies grant wishes. And he says, I know what I'm going to wish for. And he says, I am going to go to Amsterdam, and I am going to see the author. And this has very much piqued her interest, right? She's like, no way, is he really going to do that? And then he says, and I spoke with the genies, and I don't think it would make much sense if the girl that showed me the author in the first place didn't come with me. So, all because of Gus, now she gets to go. But there's a roadblock. The doctors say you just can't go. They say you're not healthy. Matter of fact, I think right at this point, she has health complications. I think she wakes up and her lungs start to fill with fluid. And you're like, no, Haley Grace, no. But then she goes to the ER, and they managed to save her. She's good. They managed to save her. And the doctor says there's just no way you can go to Amsterdam. Which sucks, right? She really wanted to go. But then she finally ends up, she can finally go. So she goes. And they go. And boy, is that, as romantic as it possibly gets. I mean, they're in a new city with one another. Her mom gets her this beautiful dress. Gus is dressed up in a tuxedo. They have this dinner that is paid for. They're allowed to drink champagne because the age is younger in Amsterdam. And they have this beautiful night where they end up, I think they have sex. And The next day, it's time for them to meet this author, and it turns out the author is a complete drunk and an asshole, and it's just like sucks that he's such a shitty guy. And it wasn't even him that invited him out there. It was his assistant, and his assistant apologizes for it. And she decides to go and show them the Anne Frank Museum. So they go to the Anne Frank Museum, and there's lots of stairs at this museum. And Haley Grace has been told to take it easy. There was even one scene at the very beginning of the movie where her dad got some alone time with Gus, and her dad tried to tell Gus, like, hey, listen, she's going to try and keep up with you because she's just that kind of girl. But you have to be aware that, she's very ill. So she's kind of struggling to get up these stairs, and it's another point of panic in the movie where you're like, oh no, is she going to collapse and she's going to be in Amsterdam and she's all the way out, like detached away from her parents who would know how to help her? Like she's just with like this random receptionist person and Gus who like, I'm sorry, Gus, but I don't think you know where the closest hospital is, like I don't think Gus would really know what to do. But she makes it up the stairs, and they're watching the Anne Frank thing, and up there in Anne Frank's room, they have like the most beautiful kiss ever. The most beautiful kiss. And it's like long and passionate, and everyone in that small room ends up taking notice. And they all clap for them when they're done. All these old people are clapping for them for that kiss. And, it's just like they're just so totally in love, And so the trip's coming to an end. And Gus takes Haley Grace out to a bench in Amsterdam before they go home. And he tells her, hey, listen, my cancer came back and it's everywhere and I'm going to die. And this is very much like the entire plot twist to the whole film, because this whole time you're worried about Haley Grace's health, and then all of a sudden Gus is going to die. And now you're no longer worried about Haley Grace's health, but you're worried about Haley Grace's love. How is she going to be able to handle this? So they spend the rest of their time together amazingly. It's the whole time Gus is going to die. There was a while where she didn't hear much from him. Or no, they were inseparable, I think, from when they got home from Amsterdam. And eventually he dies. And it's before he dies though, it's very sad, he asks her to write a eulogy. Is that the right word? I think. For his funeral. And then, he wants her to read it in front of him, and she does, and it's filled with jokes that he would like and only he would get. And it's like, he says like, I just wanted to attend my own funeral, and it's really like beautiful, but he's still dying, and he's still gonna die. And, he does die. And it's this very sad scene where Haley Grace's parents get the call, and they go wake her up to tell her, and she's crying in her bed uncontrollably. And it's very, very sad. And so at the funeral, she attends. Oh man, this is making me sad. It's a really sad movie. At the funeral, she says she gets up and it's time for her to speak, and she sees his parents, and she realizes that she can't say the speech that she wrote for him, that she said for him, and she'll have to keep that speech to herself. So she stops with the speech and then speaks from the heart and just talks about how Gus is just one of the best people she ever met and all this stuff. And it's awesome. It's awesome. It's amazing. And the funeral's over, and who's there? But of course, the author, the shitty author, who of course is wearing all white to a funeral. And you're like, what the hell is this guy doing? And she gets in her car. She tells her parents she's just going to drive home alone. And she gets in her car. And the author guy gets in her car with her. And she's like, get out of my car. Like, you ruined my trip to Amsterdam. Like, you're a shitty person. I want nothing to do with you now that my love of my life is dead. And he tries to give her this note. And she's so mad. She says, I don't want it. She takes it and crumbles it up and throws it. And he says, okay, I'll leave. And she goes home and she's talking to her blind friend that was a mutual of her and Gus. And the blind friend mentions a note that Gus had asked that the author delivered to her. And she goes, what? That's from Gus? Gus wrote that note? And so she runs and gets the note from the car. And she reads it. And it's just one more flood of tears. And the movie ends. I think it's worth talking about here now how heartbreak, heartache, and loss can hurt. It's like you can get cut and punched and injured physically, but to lose someone that you love, I think, I mean, I guess I wouldn't know. I've had my heart like I'm thinking about like the times where I've been hurt the most, and it kind of, your heart kind of drops to your stomach and it feels like you're suffocating. And your mind kind of goes black and you feel alone. And The Fault in Our Stars is a beautiful movie because the whole time I'm watching it, I'm picturing this author that wrote it. And whilst, he may never have had, maybe he did have cancer, I don't know. My point is, he wrote a story that really resonated. It very much captured all of the ups and downs in any sort of situation. And I feel that I feel very like honored to have seen the film, and I feel very I don't know if the word is aware, but The Fault in Our Stars really makes me think and reflect on my own love. And I feel like I see myself in Gus a lot. Because Gus is very, just like snap, make stuff happen. Don't think about this. Just cool guy, always on top, And I feel like at the very end of the movie, Haley Grace wakes up to a call from Gus, and he's at the gas station because he wanted to get more cigarettes. He just wanted to do something for himself, he says. And when Haley Grace gets there, he can't really move, and there's blood coming out of his mouth, and he's just in real bad shape. So she calls the ambulance. And that's very much like one of her last experiences with Gus. And in her monologue during his funeral, she says, I wish I could say Augustus, I think his last name is Bloom, Augustus Bloom went out like I had met him, strong, confident, and unafraid. But that just wasn't the case. In his last days, he really was a shadow of himself. And that seriously kind of hit me pretty hard, because these kids, I don't even know if they had known each other for an entire year even, but it's like they went through an entire lifetime together. Like they met each other, they fell deeply in love, they had their ups and downs, but it was all love. Like they loved each other the whole time, and then it's time for one of them to say goodbye to this world and die. And I guess not his true self, but he was really scared. He didn't want to die. He did not want to die. He was not able to die he was not able to keep his act. His act of this strong man that, is not worried about anything. He couldn't keep it. And it didn't matter, for her. She still loved him. And even after he died, a note got to her where he just wrote that she was the most wonderful and amazing thing to ever happen to him. And it's like, how could you ever even think of a story like that? I mean, this is the kind of story that mind-bending. The Fault in Our Stars. The writer of the movie actually makes an appearance in the movie as Dad in Airport, which I thought was pretty cool. I like that scene a lot, especially because I recognized him instantly. I think that's a sign that I'm getting older, that I'm able to recognize people, I think that would have totally flown. Like as a young person, I would have no interest in or care that like an author of a book that became a movie starred in the movie. Like I wouldn't, but nowadays, like that's the kind of thing that gets me excited. But that's The Fault in Our Stars. And I just don't like. It was an amazing watch. Brought tears to my eyes, and it's scary to think that at any moment I could be diagnosed with cancer, or someone that I loved could have cancer, and I don't know. It just makes you really be grateful. But I feel like the lens that I looked at them through the movie, I think it was very like young and dumb love. I feel like a lot of it was very stupid, right? Like she very much sacrificed a lot of family time to see Gus. And Gus very much like didn't give her any breathing room. And I feel that I kind of frowned upon that, maybe because I saw like myself in it a bit, and a part of myself that I didn't like, a young part of myself that maybe I still am, to be honest. But it was love nonetheless. I mean, I think young dumb love is maybe even the strongest kind. Tomorrow's episode, I'm probably going to talk about Inception. I saw Inception as well, starring I don't know his name. That's an amazing movie. I'm thinking about throwing a party at my place next week because I can. And I'm wondering what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think about that? Like, is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? I think it's tricky because I don't know why I'm thinking about it so much. I think it's good that I'm thinking about it so much. I think just before I would, do the invitations, I would have to make sure this place is clean and not the other way around. That's what I said earlier. And I think that's what I'm falling back on. I've got a lot on my plate. It's hard to get this video stuff done before work. It's hard to balance work and this video stuff. And of course, there's eating relatively healthy, saving money, and keeping a clean living space. I'm very much trying to make all that work. And the idea of like the, dare I say, bachelor that throws a party is very alluring. It's also maybe a step in the wrong direction. I don't know if I need to be seeing myself as a party-throwing bachelor right now. But also, I have been working so very hard, and I am still so very young that I feel like maybe this is a good thing for me to do. That's maybe not so much what I'm supposed to do, right? For example, I have not been getting any fast food lately. I have not been, like I've been very much like making this big push in my life towards like consistency and responsibility and like maturity. And I feel like I should complement that push with like a dash of fun. Like the fun that, you're not really supposed to have. I'll invite all these people over to my place. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Another thing is my roommates would actually happen to be coming back into town on the day that I was thinking of inviting everyone. So maybe I'll push it back in my mind about a week. That was probably what I'll end up doing. But once again, I can't be thinking about this. If I want to think about this and I want to do this, then simply put, the only solution is for me to clean. This place needs to be sparkling clean before I send out even a single invitation. I have to go number 2, but right when this episode ends, I have to get on my bicycle and go straight to work. So it's going to be a bit of a, it's going to be a close one. It's going to be a close one. I wish I could end this episode early, but I just can't. I'm just probably going to be about 5 minutes late to work because, sadly, the clock at work is 5 minutes fast. So to help me out here, I'm going to tell you exactly what I have to do the second that I cut these cameras. I'm going to cut the camera, cut the mic, export the track on the computer just so it doesn't, I don't lose it. And then I'm going to go, I'll probably throw on this shirt, keep these pants on. I have slip-on shoes right out there. I need my wallet, watch, phone, keys, and then all of my uniform stuff is exploded in the kitchen. I can just put it right back in the back. And then my bike is already by the door. I don't need my charger. I have my belt. And I just have to remember throughout my shift that I have not read my book yet. And that is scene. That's my plan. That is game, set, match. I think pooping is just going to have to wait. I'm going to have to do it at work. So this has been episode 145 of Keeping It Real. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. I always find a way to. and email me. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.